Today, we'll be looking at Strife, a game considered to be the first, if not one of the first, FPS-RPG hybrids. More specifically, we're looking at Strife Veteran Edition, a 2014 digital re-release which came with a few tweaks and added features. Sometime before the game begins, a comet strikes the planet, releasing a viral plague which kills millions of people. Those who weren't killed begin to mutate and decay, and started hearing the voice of a malignant god. They formed a religious sect known as the Order, and began wiping out the women and children. Sometime later, a group of people who were able to resist the voice in their head formed a resistance called the Front, and have been fighting ever since to take down the Order. As the game opens, your character, a wandering mercenary, arrives in a town called Tarnhill after hearing about the conflict. You decide to rest at an inn for the night, but, as it happens, the Order has been rounding up any suspicious persons in the area, and yes, you happen to be one of them. Everyone else has presumably been taken to some kind of prison, but you, for whatever reason, are put in what looks like the back room of a sewer or something with a lone guard, who you quickly dispatch with a knife you have concealed on your person. And since presumably the guards would have searched you when they captured you, let's not ask where exactly you keep that thing. You break out of your makeshift prison, kill another guard, and find a man named Rowan.
In a small world, word travels fast. I hear you just removed some obstacles from your path.
Word travels fast? I just killed those obstacles right outside your door. How are you not immediately aware of that? Rowan asks if you want to make more money, to which you reply, sure, we all do. He tells you of a man named Belden, who is being held in the Order's sanctuary. The Front wants him killed before he talks. He promises you 50 gold and gives you a little helper. Ooh, you mean Viagra? Oh, a crossbow. Sure. Of course that's what you meant. Quick question though. We just killed 2 armed guards. Why can't we take one of their guns? Sure, Rowan mentions a bonus if you can kill Belden without setting off all the alarms, but as I later discovered throughout my playthroughs, stealth doesn't seem to be worth a damn in this game. After finding and killing Belden and taking his ring as proof, you return to Rowan. He pays you the gold and offers you a job within the Front, giving you a comm unit through which you are contacted by a woman codenamed Blackbird. Blackbird sends you to the ruins of the Town Hall building, where on her instructions you tell the guard named Jeff that you need gold.
Blackbird told you the code, huh? Well, let me shut off the alarm.
Wait, hold on. I need gold is the super secret code phrase, apparently? I could just be some random beggar coming in for a handout. You just up and show me your secret organization just because I need some gold? Sheesh, no wonder the Front's been struggling. After passing through the absolutely rigorous security, you meet the Front's leader, Maisel, who tells you that Blackbird will continue to be your guide on your missions as...
She's taken quite a shine to you.
Seriously? Well, I just met like 10 minutes ago. Damn, I'm good! Your first mission is to free some Front soldiers who were imprisoned after an unsuccessful raid. To get access to the prison, you'll need to see the governor, who has another task for you to complete first. He actually has a choice of 2. The one I went with involved a warehouse worker who's been secretly selling children to the Order. This has made the governor angry and he wants the worker dead. Not necessarily for the selling of children, but because the governor wasn't getting a cut of the profits. Good to see a politician with his priorities straight. With the governor's task done, you get a pass to see the prison warden to get the key. Except once you do see the warden, he's a little uncooperative, so you need to kill him to get the key, making the whole ordeal with the governor rather pointless. Once you're in the prison, you'll need to navigate your way past the cells and through the corridors until you find this judge, and it's his key that actually releases all the prisoners. The only problem with that? His key is his hand. There we go, problem solved. With the prisoners released, you return to the Front base where Maisel gives you your next mission. You need to get into the power station and destroy a crystal which powers the Order's defense systems. Blackbird sends you to see a spy in the warehouse who gives you an ID taken off a dead power station worker. You can use this ID to impersonate said worker in the power station. With the crystal destroyed and the defenses down, Blackbird tells you you'll need to lower the gates to the Order's castle, and to get there you'll need to go through the sewers. Once there, she tells you to find Waran, the Rat King. Waran will help you, but first he needs a guard uniform. Why he needed it I never found out, as in my playthrough I actually found the uniform before I found Waran, but according to the wikis, the uniform has a respirator and his people can use it to scavenge for food on the surface. Having been given the uniform, he gives you a flamethrower. Well, the parts to one anyway, you can have it assembled by the Front's weaponsmith, and he tells you how to lower the gate to the Order's castle. With the gate lowered, you return to the front base, where Mace will let you in on a little backstory. The virus, let loose by the comet, not only caused insanity within the Order, but also physical decay. The Order needed to keep their numbers up, but since they've been systematically killing off the women and children, procreation was out of the question. So instead, they go all Cyberman and use biomechanical enhancements to preserve themselves. Maisel says that the collective consciousness of these acolytes is controlled by one being, the Programmer. With all your tasks completed, the castle is defenseless, so the front takes the opportunity to move in and capture it, during which time you and Blackbird must find and kill the Programmer. The Programmer fight is a tough one, especially if you're playing Strife for the first time, as the Programmer's attack can and will take you by surprise. Now, I'm sure the optimal strategy here is probably just to lob rockets at him until he falls, but I've actually found it more useful to lure him into the hallways surrounding his area and lob grenades at him. When the Programmer is killed, he drops a strange semicircular device. You grab this device, which sends a powerful shock through you and knocks you unconscious. When you wake up back at the Order's former castle, now the front's new base, Maisel explains that this device is actually part of a larger device called the Sigil, an intelligent weapon worshipped by the Order. The Sigil is capable of powerful attacks, such as the one used by the Programmer, and the attack gets more powerful with every new piece, but at a cost. Instead of ammo, the Sigil draws from the user's life force, which is why the Sigil shocked you when you grabbed it. It was bonding to you. Maisel says that the front needs to get the remaining 4 pieces of the Sigil away from the Order, and for more help, you'll need to find a being called the Oracle. You and Blackbird make your way through an area called the Borderlands, and from there it's into a network of caves, which eventually lead to the Oracle's temple.
Are we really supposed to trust a guy whose inner sanctum is green?
Really, Blackbird? There's some giant, see-through, floaty eyeball thingy hanging out in the hole in the roof, and the first thing you notice is the freaking conversation! The Oracle tells you that to gain the second piece of the Sigil, you'll need to kill another cyborg called the Bishop, who will be expecting you. From there, getting to the Bishop is about as standard as it has been the whole game. Just weave your way through the appropriate area, find the Bishop, and kill him. The act of killing him, however, is another matter. You see, the Bishop, as well as every other boss from this point on, has 2 stages. For the Bishop's first stage, you can pretty much treat him like you treated the Programmer, lob rockets and/or grenades at him till he goes down. Then comes his second stage, or at least the second stage of his boss fight, because even though you killed him, from out of his body comes this thing, the same as the one you saw at the Oracle's temple. This is called a Spectre, and the only way to damage and kill one is with the Sigil attack. Once the Bishop's Spectre is destroyed and the second Sigil piece is in hand, Blackbird says she thinks the Spectre looked familiar. Well, I guess she was paying attention at the Oracle's temple after all. You return to the temple and talk to the Oracle, who tells you that the front's own leader, Maisel, is a traitor, secretly working for the Order, and that it's him you'll have to kill to gain the next Sigil piece. Now, it's at this point in the game that the storyline takes a major split. And depending on the choice you make in this conversation, you'll either end up with the best ending, or a not-so-good ending. Now, you can either trust the Oracle and kill Maisel, as he says, or stay loyal to the front and just kill the Oracle right then and there. Now, in my first playthrough, I wound up with the best ending, so that's the one we'll focus on for now, and then I'll tell you later about the not-so-good ending. The Oracle doesn't fool you for a bit, and you tell him as such, so he sends his guards and his Spectre after you. You kill the Spectre, grab the third Sigil piece, and return to Maisel. And if he's aware of the Oracle being killed, I can only assume he doesn't give 2 shits, as no mention is made of it. Instead, he tells you that new information suggests that the Order hasn't been killing the front soldiers. Rather, they've been giving them the same Borgifying treatment they've been giving themselves, and he wants you to shut this operation down. One of Maisel's captains, named Richter, tells you he had the key to the factory where this takes place stolen, but the agent that stole the key is missing in an area called the Catacombs. You weave your way through said catacombs and eventually come out in a sort of a temple area, where the first thing you see is a sacrificial altar with a dead body, presumably that of the missing agent. Exploring a little further, you find the main temple area, filled with enemies, including a free-roaming Spectre. Judging from the looks of its attack, this Spectre had at one point inhabited the Programmer. Why or how they were separated, no one knows, but once it's out of the way, you find not 1, but 2 keys. One to the factory, the other to the mines, which you actually need to access first, as the factory entrance is protected by a force field. The mines contain an ore called Degnan, which has both magnetic and explosive properties, and which Blackbird says would be perfect for taking out a force field. With the mine detour finished and the ore obtained, you lob a chunk at the force field and shoot it. Sure enough, the explosion knocks out the force field. It also pisses off the guards, so you quickly make your way into the factory.
Sorry, hero. This is all new to me.
Oh, gee, thanks. Despite Blackbird's confessed uselessness, you manage to find your way through the factory until eventually you find and destroy the machine being used to convert the front's human soldiers into the Order's cyborg acolytes. The sight of this atrocity being inflicted on her fellow soldiers and the fact Maisel sent these soldiers here knowing what would happen pisses Blackbird off. She's decided Maisel really is a traitor and it's time to get revenge and kill him. Presumably you agree. It's hard to tell. You don't really say much in this game. Back at the front base, you confront Maisel, who reveals he is indeed possessed by a specter.
The one god must be free!
Sick fuck. Waste him.
With Maisel and his specter killed and the fourth sigil piece collected, Blackbird tells you that Richter, now in command of the ground troops with Maisel gone, has pinpointed the power signature of the fifth and final piece in a laboratory located somewhere under the factory you just destroyed. By now, I'm sure you know the drill. Go through the area, kill all the enemies, find the last boss. This one's called the Lore Master. You'll want to be extra careful with him, as in his first stage, he has a grappling hook attack which, in addition to damaging you, can pull you towards him and, depending on where you are, right down into a pit of instant death. Kill him, kill his specter, and grab the sigil piece. With the fifth piece in hand, you now have control of the completed sigil, and upon the Lore Master's death, a hidden area in his chamber opens up. There, you use the completed sigil with a glowing red altar, which opens a secret passage that leads to the inside of a large alien ship. After fighting a multitude of just about every enemy you've faced in the game, you at last come face to face with the final boss, known only as the Entity. As it reveals itself, it taunts you, saying though you crush the Order and saw through his ruses, he will still infect you and twist you. As with most of the main bosses, the Entity fight has two stages. Well, I suppose 3 if you want to count having to shoot this egg thing to get the Entity to even appear. In the first stage, the Entity appears as more or less another Spectre-type creature, which you kill with the sigil. In the second stage, he splits into 3 smaller Spectre-type creatures, which you kill with the sigil. Once these are destroyed, so too at last is the threat from the Order. With the day saved, Blackbird, who reveals her real name to be Shauna, teleports in, saying they can now create a vaccine to combat the virus, and she wants to thank you in person. Told you I was good. Now, let's talk about the second ending, which, although it's still considered a victory, it's not near as good as the other one you've just seen. The Oracle tells you Maisel is a traitor and needs to be killed. You take him at his word, return to the base, and confront Maisel, who initially denies the charge of being a traitor and indeed tries to point the finger of blame right back at the Oracle. You, however, don't listen, at which point Maisel exposes himself. Not like that, get your mind out of the gutter. And the fight proceeds as before. With Maisel at his specter down, you gain the third sigil piece and return to the Oracle. He tells you your next target is the Lore Master, and not only does he order you to kill the Lore Master, he even opens up a hidden room containing a teleporter which takes you to an area just outside the entrance of his lab, allowing you to bypass a good chunk of the areas you'd have to go through for the best ending. Again, the Lore Master fight goes the same as before, only this time when you get the next sigil piece and the area with the altar opens, Blackbird notes that you'll need the complete sigil to use the altar and you're currently short a piece. Guess who's got it? When confronted, the Oracle says that thanks to you, you stupid git, he now has the complete sigil, and with it he will not only destroy this world, but many others. Cue the Oracle fight. With the completed sigil now in hand, you return to the altar, enter the alien ship, and find the Entity. Whereas in the best ending he spoke with the Oracle's voice, which presumably was just his normal voice speaking through the Oracle, this time as he reveals himself he speaks with Blackbird's voice, suggesting he has been impersonating her for at least part of your adventure, and saying he has waited for a fool like you to release him. Cue the Entity fight, and with the Entity gone, the ending goes somewhat like this.
The evil was gone, but our future was uncertain and clouded with doubt. It would take generations to purge the virus from our people, if we survived that long. Whatever the evil wanted, it drained from us the one thing we needed. It left us without hope.
There is technically a third ending, which is the bad ending. It plays anytime you die while fighting the Entity and basically says the Order continues its evil ways, converting the men and killing everyone else until mankind has gone extinct. So, while the story is by no means badly written, it's not exactly perfect either. There are some things that make no sense to me or just weren't explained properly. Why, for instance, would the code to get into a presumably super-secret resistance operation be something as simple and common as asking for gold? Why did the programmer not have a specter possessing him when you fought him? Now, from a gameplay standpoint, yes, I know it makes perfect sense because you can only fight a specter with a sigil and you didn't have the sigil at that point. I'm just saying from a story perspective, it would have been nice to know why the programmer seemed to be a special case. Speaking of the sigil, where did it come from? Why was it broken into pieces? If I were to speculate, I'd say it came from the same place as the entity in its ship, which I'm guessing is probably what that comet that struck the planet actually was, the ship crash landing, but that still wouldn't explain why it was separated into segments. Again, not saying this completely ruins the story or the game for me, they're just a few points that I thought could have been touched on to better add to the lore. The casual gamer may glance at Strife and think, a Doom clone. And they wouldn't be far off, considering Strife was made with the id Tech 1 engine, which was also used for a number of other games during the 90s, including the first 2 Dooms. This was actually a point of negative criticism towards the game, as by the time of the game's original release, the id Tech 1 or Doom engine was considered obsolete compared to better-looking games such as Duke Nukem 3D, which was released a few months earlier, and Quake, which would be coming out a month later. What do I think? Sure, the engine may have been obsolete, but that doesn't necessarily make the game look bad. Okay, maybe the lighting and the far-off textures in the original game were a little hard on the eyes, but the Veteran Edition fixes that handily. Although, I do still think the sprites for anyone who isn't a major character look more or less identical and kind of blend together. Don't really have much to say about the music or sound assets this time out. They're all par for the course and do the jobs they set out to do fairly well. Each normal weapon sounds about like you'd expect, and the sigil weapon lets off a very satisfying crackle of electricity, and while the music manages to convey the tension of each area nicely, it's otherwise not really that memorable, save for one piece that seems to play more than any other, and I could swear I'm getting a Cops Bad Boys vibe from it. Take a listen, tell me what you think. Strife has 2 modes you could choose from when starting a new game, but we'll only be focusing on the single-player aspects, as multiplayer seems to only be available between friends that have the game, and I wasn't able to round up anyone on my friends list. All the basic controls you'd expect from an FPS like this are present and accounted for. You move around with WASD, look around with the mouse, fire your currently selected weapon with either the left mouse button or left control, change weapons with the number keys or the mouse wheel, and interact with things with the right mouse button. And of course you'll find armor, health, and ammo pickups along the way as well. Your character handles more or less accurately, although he likes to slide around a little bit when you let go of a movement key. You have the option to turn auto-aiming on or off. If I were you, I'd turn it off, as the auto-aim never seemed to work that well for me. Plus, with it on, some weapons like the mini missile launcher wouldn't fire all the way up if you were aiming at something on the ceiling. Including the sigil, there are 8 different weapons in the game. You start out with a dinky little knife which doesn't really do much. Soon after you start, you pick up the crossbow, one of a couple of weapons with multiple ammo types. Its standard ammo is an electric crossbow bolt, but you can also pick up poison bolts, capable of taking out an acolyte in one shot. Then you have an assault gun, i.e. a machine gun, and the mini missile launcher. Next is the flamethrower, which to me didn't really seem all that effective unless you're just feeling particularly sadistic and just want to light someone on fire. Then there's the grenade launcher, another weapon with 2 ammunitions, a regular grenade, which behaves as you might expect, and a phosphorus grenade, which covers the area in flames. I actually prefer using the phosphorus grenade over the flamethrower, as it has more range and covers a larger area in flames for much longer. Now the Steam page also made mention of a torpedo weapon, but I never found it in any of my playthroughs. It's called the Mauler, and it's obtainable through a side mission, which probably explains why I never found it. It too has 2 different firing modes, but rather than separate ammos, they both use the same ammo as the flamethrower. The first is a weaker scattershot blast, while the second is a more powerful ball of green energy which fires out a shockwave of smaller energy balls upon impact. Then there's the sigil itself, which fires off a powerful lightning attack which changes and deals more damage as you collect each of its 5 pieces. Instead of ammo, the sigil draws from your life points, the amount again varying depending on how many pieces you have. And maybe it's just my own ineptitude using the sigil, but it didn't really seem all that effective to me. In fact, I'd even go as far as to say it was a little bit underwhelming. For some uber-powerful, intelligent lightning, life-draining weapon, you'd expect it to kill anything it hits in one shot, but even the base acolytes seem to take 2 hits with the most powerful lightning attack. But remember, this is not merely an FPS, this is an FPS-RPG hybrid! So the goal is not merely to shoot anything that moves, although I suppose that's still an option if you feel like taking your aggressions out on the nearest peasant. You gain quests as you progress through the game. Actually, I suppose it would be more accurate to say you gain missions or subquests as part of the larger main quest of ending the threat from the Order. The game is more or less linear with a scant few side missions. When on a mission, there will usually be quest markers on the automap to help you keep track of objectives, though these have been less than helpful at times, and have even stuck around after an objective has been completed. More often than not, you gain a mission by interacting with a character and starting a conversation. While in a conversation, unless you have nothing more to say, you'll have a number of dialogue options. Strangely, despite the options being numbered, you can't use the number keys or number pad to select an option. You have to use the mouse. You gain gold as you complete missions, which you can spend in one of the few types of shops to buy weapons and ammo, health, armor, and various other gadgets to aid you. And as you complete major front missions, you'll also be given vouchers to take to the front's medic and weapons trainer. Medic vouchers are used to give you implants, which increase your stamina, which is basically your max health, by 10, while weapons training does the same for your accuracy. You also have an inventory at the bottom of the screen. You can scroll through the items in the inventory with the R and F keys, use the currently selected item with Q, drop it with V, and query it, which basically just tells you the item's name and nothing more, with H. And if you find those keys to be a little odd, not to worry, all the keys are rebindable, at least in the Veteran Edition. One of the items you can have in your inventory is a medkit, which heals in various amounts depending on the type you get. A unique feature of the game, or at least one I haven't seen in any other FPS at the time, is an option to automatically use a healing item if you have any in your inventory anytime your health goes below 50. Like the auto-aim, however, this was another feature I found it better to turn off, as it was just easier this way for me to keep tabs on my medkits. Plus, it seems to prioritize smaller healing items over larger ones, which is fine if you're facing 1 or 2 enemies, but not really if you're up against a crowd of enemies or one particularly difficult enemy like a boss. Speaking of difficulty, there are 5 settings to choose from, ranging from training, the easiest, to bloodbath, the hardest. For my playthroughs, I went with the second difficulty setting, Rookie, and even on that setting, I found the game to be just a little too tough in some parts of the game. Made all the more frustrating when I played for long stretches and forgot there's no autosave. So yeah, save often. I'd say save in a new slot each time, especially with the potential to screw up the ending with the wrong choice, but the game only has 6 slots. If you should find the game too difficult, fear not, for let's not forget, this is a 1990s FPS, and what 1990s FPS would be complete without cheat codes? Strife had them in its original release, and they've carried over to the re-release. Using them in the Veteran Edition does, however, come at the cost of achievements, should you care about that sort of thing. The cheats are about what you'd expect from a game like this. Invincibility, no clipping, all weapons, all keys, level skip. There's even one that lets you choose which background song to play. The invincibility cheat comes with an additional drawback, in that it sets your health to 100, which is fine if you were below that. However, if you use it at full health after you've gained any stamina upgrades and you decide to turn the cheat off, then you'll have to pay gold at a hospital or burn some medkits to get back to max. Lastly, let's talk just a little bit about level design. Full disclosure, in my first playthrough, I had to use the level skip cheat to get to the 5th boss's area. I'd probably have to use it in my second playthrough as well if I wasn't so graciously given a teleport there. Why? Because as I progressed through the game, I found the indoor areas seemed to be getting more and more maze-like in their design, which in itself I don't mind, but it got to the point where the 2 areas immediately preceding where I was trying to get to just seemed to keep circling into each other, and the auto map didn't offer me much help. But then, that's just my experience. Maybe you'll have a better time of it. Strife may be an FPS-RPG hybrid, but it definitely seems to lean more towards the FPS side of things than anything else. Now, is it the best game ever made? Hardly. The weapons, while they do their jobs effectively, aren't really that unique. The character models all look the same, and some of the features of the game which sound like they'd be helpful, like the quest markers, the auto-aiming, and the automatic health usage, end up hindering more than helping. Still, it is a fun little shooter, and even though I didn't get to try the multiplayer out myself, the fact remains, it's there if you have any friends on your friends list with the game. Strife Veteran Edition is, at the very least, worth a look.